squad that says your favorite auntie with uncle tendencies, and this right here is Cess Talks Sports, BWISE PoliSports Tea Time, where we don't just break down games, we unpack the power, the policy, and the politics behind the scoreboard. So let's go ahead and stir this kettle like this kettle real proper. Now let's sit with this for a second. Black folks are the most athletically talented group in the world and still got the least control over the institutions that run sports. That's not just a mic drop. That's Chapter 9 of Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. That's history, real talk, and receipts all in one. And yet, in 2025, it still hits like a fresh whistle. You can see Black brilliance on every court, every field, every damn highlight reel. But follow the checks, the board seats, the TV contracts. That ain't where the power lives. We built the house, but they still holding the deed. Let's be clear. This episode ain't just about NIL deals or sneaker contracts. This one's about ownership, about control. It might look like progress, but Black athletes with endorsement bags popping up in commercials, building platforms. But let's not get played. NIL is not the promised land. Not yet. The real question, are we actually moving towards stakeholding or just remixing the same old exploitation in shinier packaging? So let's unpack it. Why is it that still, with all this Black talent, all this visibility, all this capital, we don't see true collective power? Why the hell do college programs, pro leagues, and media conglomerates still run the show, still write the rules, and still cash the biggest checks? Yeah, NIL cracked the door. Who's got the keys? And who's quietly deciding who even gets invited inside? The conversation goes deeper than game tape. What's happening in sports is a mirror reflecting everything Black labor is up against in America at large. It's a warning, a window, and we're going to treat it like both. So if you came for a real talk, good, you're in the right house. Pull up a chair, pour your tea, and don't just sip, speak. Because today we've taken it from the gym to the plantation to the boardroom, tracing how Black labor keeps the engine running while ownership stays just out of reach. And I ain't breaking it down alone. You already know who rides shotgun with me, Political Lil, the PoliSports general herself, back in the building to set the scene, connect the dots, and call out the contradictions. Lil, go ahead and set this thing off. Let them know what time it is.
What's up, fam? So glad to be here. And let's be clear. NIL is a battleground. However it's being sold is empowerment. But it operates inside a system built on centuries of disempowerment. These deals, often flashy, sometimes lucrative, can feel like freedom. But just like post-slavery sharecropping, they often come with strings, dependency on white-owned brands, universities, and networks. What's the real profit margin when you still don't own the pipeline? There's a deeper game being played. These young athletes, 18, 19, 20 years old, are being told they're now entrepreneurs. But in most cases, they're still operating under the systems where others pulling the levers. The platforms, not theirs. The schools, still profiting off their image. The agents, often not from their community. NIL may give you visibility, but it doesn't always translate to true value or power. We've got to ask the hard questions. Why is real ownership still so rare? Why don't we see Black-led sport agencies, Black-owned broadcasting networks, or equity-based NIL collectives led by and for the culture? The resistance isn't just about money. It's about control. And the system knows that if a Black athlete ever truly organized around collective power, the whole industry would have to shift.
Now, fam, before we start talking NIL like it popped up out of thin air, we got to spin the block on history real quick. Because this moment, this so-called new era of athlete empowerment, it didn't fall from the sky. It was built on a long line of labor, lies, and legacy. And Dr. Claude Anderson already gave us the blueprint. He broke it down plain. Sports in America, especially for Black folks, has always been plantation business in disguise. Same game, different jersey. Swap out cotton fields for football fields, overseers for head coaches in designer polos, and plantation houses for university boardrooms. The system ain't new, it's just rebranded. And every time we level up in talent, they level up in profit. See, Dr. Anderson didn't call Black athletes economic buffer zones just to be provocative. He was exposing the hustle. Black brilliance gets mined for value, ratings, championships, merchandise, alumni donations. But we never handed the controls. We boost the brand, but when it's time to sit in the exec suite or own a slice of the pie, locked doors, empty chairs, generational wealth left on the table. Let's take it back to the Negro Leagues real quick. Black players, black owners, black fans, black dollars circulating in black hands. We weren't just participating, we were owning the game. But when Major League Baseball came knocking, it wasn't about inclusion, it was extraction. Jackie Robinson broke the color line, but integration killed the Negro Leagues. Talent went up, but black ownership gone. That's the part they don't teach you in the history books. And we've seen that same pattern ever since. HBCUs getting drained of elite athletes. College athletes generating billions with no real return. PWIs fattening endowments off black labor on full display every March Madness. But they keep selling it as an opportunity. And we got to ask, opportunity for who? Because this NIL moment right here, it's a fork in the road. Is it liberation, or is it just the latest remix of the same old script? So before we start handing out victory flags, we got to interrogate the setup. Because commodification was never an accident, it was the playbook from the jump. Now I'm going to fall back for a second and let my ride or die, but truth-telling co-host Political Lil break down how this setup got baked in early. Go to tell the fam what they really need to know, because this ain't about money. It's about memory, mindset, and the mechanics of control. Let's talk about it.
Let's go back to Jesse Owens in 1936. This man humiliated Hitler in front of the world, brought home 4 gold medals. When he got back to the U.S., he couldn't even walk through the front door of the hotel for a party where he was the guest of honor. He was the international hero, but domestically, still a second-class citizen. That's the contradiction we keep seeing. Excellence without empowerment, achievement without access. Owens was used as a symbol, but never really given full personhood or profit. He ran for America, but America never ran for him. The system applauded his legs, but it ignored his voice. That's commodification in plain sight. And it didn't stop with him. Fast forward to Muhammad Ali, who dared to speak, to resist, to claim his own narrative. They stripped him of his titles, demonized him in the press, and tried to erase his platform because he refused to be silent, a silent tool for the state. From Ali to today's athlete, the message is clear. Perform, but don't question. Entertain, but don't organize. Profit others, but don't seek power. And when an athlete dares to break that mold, Colin Kaepernick, Maya Moore, or even Angel Reese, they become the controversy instead of the cause. What's really being policed isn't behavior, it's independence. So when we talk about NIL, we can't be fooled into thinking this is brand new. It's the latest chapter in a long saga of packaging black talent for white profit. The challenge now is whether black athletes can shift from being platforms for others to building platforms of their own. Because until we start owning the system, we're still just a labor in a new kind of field.
Now, let's hold up that mirror and get real clear. Right now, in 2025, the sports economy is flooded with black brilliance. We are the game. WNBA, NBA, NFL, NCAA, the jerseys, the box scores, the highlight reels, the culture. That's all us. Every viral clip, every sellout crowd, every record-breaking stat line. You already know who's putting in that work. But here's the contradiction. We're everywhere on the floor and down there invisible in the boardroom. We keep showing up, but we still don't own the game we built. Let's get into the receipts. As of today, there ain't a single majority black owner in the WNBA, NBA, NFL, MLB, or NHL. Not one. Michael Jordan, he was the only one. And he stepped back last year after selling his majority stake in the Hornets. The rest, token level ownership stakes, symbolic gestures, not systemic change. And in NFL, that old boys club still locked tight. In the NBA, minor stake here, honorary title there, but no real power at the top. And don't even get us started on MLB or NHL. We're overrepresented in production, but boxed out of the profits. And it don't stop at ownership, coaching pipelines, front office promotions, GM and executive leadership tracks. We're still watching white counterparts with less experience get fast-tracked into positions black folks have to fight twice as hard just to interview for. It's a rigged elevation system, point blank. We got to stop soft-shoeing around this and calling it a diversity issue. Nah, this is economic containment. It's not that the system can't make room, it's that it won't, unless it can control the narrative, the leverage, and the legacy. Black excellence is welcomed as long as it stays on the leash. But let us start talking collective power, group economics, long-term strategy. Now all of a sudden it's a problem. Now the room get real quiet. Now the invites dry up. That's why this next part is critical, Because every time Black athletes try to move from the individual bag chasing to formation, from solo deals to collaborative frameworks, the whole machine gets shook. And that's when they send in the distractions, the false narratives, the divide and conquer tactics. Because unified Black economic power in sports, that's their worst nightmare. So now I'm tagging in the one who always brings the heat with the history, Political Lil. Because when it comes to exposing why they fear us in alignment, Lil gonna lay it bare. Tell the people why Black athletes in formation is the revolution they keep trying to derail.
Says you just laid it out. And here's the part they don't want us to see. When Black athletes start acting like laborers with rights instead of entertainers with perks, that's when the gloves come off. You see, it's how leagues treat athletic unions. The NFL Players Association constantly fighting for basic protections. The NCAA still trying to block any move that gives student athletes real bargaining power. It's no accident. It's about keeping the labor force disorganized. And let's be honest, if Black athletes collectively withheld their labor tomorrow, the entire economic structure of the American sports would collapse. Not slow down, collapse. That's the kind of leverage we're sitting on, and the system knows it. That's why any whisper of union expansion, NIL collectives with teeth, or independent leagues send league commissioners into panic mode. They want talent, not autonomy. And look at the WNBA, where nearly 80% of the league is made up of women of color. They've been at the forefront of political expression, labor negotiations, and brand ownership. But even there, the resistance is fully funding the league. Expansion team ownership or supporting collective bargaining with real revenue sharing is strong. Why? Because Black women in formation is one of the most powerful and feared forces in sports and beyond. So the question now is, how do we move from protest to power, from fragments of influence to full-fledged infrastructure? Because if this generation of athletes can figure that out, if they can go from being the face of the brand to the owners of the system, we're not just watching sports, we're watching a revolution.
Let's talk about this so-called NIL era everybody's hyping up. Like it's the second coming of athlete freedom. They call it a game changer, the great equalizer, the era of Black empowerment. Let's keep it a buck. Don't let that flash fool you. Yeah, NIL, name, image, and likeness, can be a tool of liberation, but it can also be a slick hustle in a designer tracksuit. They tell these young Black athletes they're CEOs now. But what's a CEO without a plan, without a squad, without legal muscle and financial armor? That ain't power. That's just polished vulnerability. That ain't ownership. That's branding with no backup. Let's really zoom in. Who's actually winning in this NIL economy? You got household names. Flau'jae Johnson building a rap sports crossover empire. Bronny James riding the LeBron legacy pipeline with global reach. Shedeur Sanders flipping his last name into brand deals, G-Wagon ads, and Rolex campaigns. And we love to see it because that's strategic. That's legacy building. That's blueprint energy. But we're not going to let the highlight reel blind us to the full picture. What about the third string quarterback at an HBCU? What about a third string quarterback at an HBCU? The All-American sprinter at a mid-major who ain't got no camera crew or PR team. The volleyball phenom whose school barely invests in women's sports. NIL ain't touching them the same way. And in some cases, they getting trapped, signing shady deals, tied up in third-party collectives that treat them like content creators, not future moguls. They become digital billboards instead of equity holders. And that's not a glitch. That's how the system was set up. Because NIL without infrastructure, education, and protection is just another remix of sharecropping. You might get some coins in the short term, but the land, the power, the long money, that still belongs to somebody else. But when the camera turns off and the hype fades, no pension, no plan, no power, just another cautionary tale. That's the warning label they won't print on the NIL flyer. Because this ain't just about deals, it's about ownership versus optics. But don't get it twisted. Some athletes are flipping the script. They're building collectives, launching businesses, investing in infrastructure, turning NIL into a cultural engine, not just a personal payday. So now we're going to let Political Lil break down how some of these young athletes are making this moment more than a trend. Tell us how real empowerment gets built from the ground up.
You said a word, Cess, because what's happening now is both hopeful and it's dangerous. NIL has opened the door. But what happens when your walkthrough depends on what you carry? And some of these young black athletes, they're carrying vision. They're not just making money, they're making moves. Let's talk about the ones flipping NIL into family businesses. Flaw J. Johnson, she isn't just signing deals. She's building a brand with her mama managing it. Rock Nation behind it, and the whole multimedia strategy in the works. Now that's a model. We're seeing others doing the same, turning their NIL into digital platforms, podcast network, YouTube shows, merch line. They're creating ecosystems. It's more than sponsorship, it's cultural branding. They're showing us that Black identity is valuable, marketable, and non-negotiable. They're claiming the narrative and monetizing the message, not just the performance. But, and this is a big but, too many athletes are walking into NIL without protection. There's no union, no national NIL safety net, no required financial literacy training. That leaves folks vulnerable to exploitation, shady middlemen, and burnout. NIL without structure is like giving someone the keys to a Ferrari with no driving lessons. You might look good pulling off the lot, but that crash coming. So here's the real question. Will NIL be the bridge to ownership or another hustle with a shelf life? Will we build systems to let the athletes pass down wealth, or will we just clap for them in the moment, then forget their names when the next big thing rolls in? The promise of NIL is real, but the power, that's still being negotiated. And if we don't build the infrastructure now, we'll be having the same conversation in another 20 years.
Now we're here, the heart of it all. Why is black ownership in sports still damn near non-existent? After all this talent, all this visibility, all these billion-dollar industries built off our backs, why don't we own more? Let's cut the fluff. It ain't just about money, it's about power. And power don't yield just because we go viral. Power don't fold for a sneaker deal or a highlight reel. Nah, power protects itself through policy, through gatekeeping, through systems that were never meant to include us. Let's talk about these gates. You want to own a team? Cool. Here's what you need. Billions in liquid capital. Unanimous approval from the good old boys club of current owners, most of whom don't like us. Deep ties to elite banking and financial institutions that have never served our communities fairly. And let's be real. They don't want new blood, especially not black blood that's been systematically locked out for generations. This ain't just business, it's legacy hoarding. The rooms where ownership deals happen. And no welcome mat out front. Now zoom out. Look at the media. They might not wear a badge, but they've been silent security guards of the system. Let a black athlete say the word equity too loud. Let a black entrepreneur talk ownership, collectives, or disruption. Suddenly they're labeled divisive, greedy, cocky, too political. That ain't PR, that's propaganda. And let's not pretend we don't see the difference in treatment. LeBron builds schools, media empires, talks ownership. They call him too much. Tom Brady opens a nutrition brand, partners with ownership groups. They call him a visionary. White fragility in sports media is subtle, but strategic. It polices our ambition. It filters who gets to dream out loud. But you know what's even more dangerous than locked doors and slanted headlines? Crushed economic imagination. Because if you control the image, you control the industry. And we're still mostly shown as talent, as products, as performers, rarely as builders, rarely as owners, rarely as visionaries. That's why Lil and I keep saying being in the game ain't enough. We got to change the damn rules. So now we're going to break down exactly how lack of capital access and the absence of cooperative models keep our people locked out the ownership lanes we deserve to drive in. Lil, talk to us about why the system fears collective power and how we really flip the economic script.
Says this is where it really gets real. Even when black athletes do have money, they still face the structural barriers to ownership. Why? Because access to capital is different than access to power. Most professional sports franchises are backed by venture capital, hedge funds, or generational wealth structures. That's not the same as NIL money or a shoe deal. We don't have the institutional scaffolding to pool resources, scale up, or protect investments. That's not coincidence. It's economic exclusion baked into American finance. Cooperative ownership, rare. Collective investment, even rarer. And that's not because we lack vision. It's because we've been conditioned to go solo, compete, and protect our individual bag. But you can't out-capitalize a billion-dollar system by yourself. That's why athlete collectives like Unrivaled, the media platforms like the Spring Hill Company, they matter. They represent a shift from individualism to infrastructure, from endorsement to ecosystem. But the system resists that. It's threatened by any model that democratizes power. Look at how long it took for some players to get equity in professional teams or a stake in media deals. Even now, the ideal of a majority Black-owned WNBA or NBA team still feels radical to the people in charge when it should be a reality. And don't even get me started on the lack of investment in Black-led sports startups. The pipeline is there, but the funding isn't, because the industry fears what we'd build if we had the resources. And this is why media control is so dangerous. It doesn't just shape how fans see athletes, it shapes how athletes even see themselves. If you're only ever shown as a star, never a strategist, you stop dreaming in ownership terms. That's what we mean when we say control the image, control the industry. Until we take back the storylines, the storytelling, we're always going to be playing someone else's game, even when we're winning.
Let's lift our heads up real quick. We talked about the grind, we've named the game, we exposed the harm. But now we pivot to power, because this ain't just about surviving the system, it's about flipping the whole blueprint. What if we didn't just play in the league, but built the league? What if we weren't chasing crumbs, but baking the damn bread? What if we stopped letting moments define us and started building legacies that live beyond us? That's what vertical integration looks like. That's what Dr. Claude Anderson been telling us from the jump. Own the damn verticals or stay stuck in the cycle. Because if we don't, Black labor will keep lining everybody else's pockets but ours. Now, let's dream, but let's do it strategic. Picture this, a Black-owned sports league. Not just a roster full of us, but ownership run by us. Founders, funders, coaches, execs, broadcast rights, the whole pipeline. Imagine the impact: youth development, community wealth, cultural control, long-term power, not just highlight power. That ain't fantasy, fam. That's the assignment. And some folks are already in motion. Look at Ice Cube in the Big Three. He built a league where the players get equity. Fans can buy in. Ownership is open. And the business model, unapologetically Black, player-led, and real. Then there's Nafisa Collier, WNBA star who said nah to the offseason status quo and helped launch Unrivaled. That ain't just a hoop league. It's a player-owned system backed by capital, strategy, and a whole TV deal. That's not reaction. That's revolution. And don't think NIL athletes can't follow suit. What they need: infrastructure, vision, blueprint, energy. Because this ain't theory anymore. It's already happening. The question is, are we paying attention? Are we playing checkers or building the board? See, ownership don't start at the top. It starts with the mindset. And mindset creates movement. Black athlete unions, NIL guilds, regional co-ops to protect and empower college players, HBCUs forming NIL collectives that keep media rights in the culture. What if Black student athletes didn't just sign deals, but built the platforms to broker them? The talent is here. The audience is here. Now it's time for strategy. The kind that turns highlight reels into real equity. So now I'm passing the mic to the one who's been tracking these power plays and co-op models before it was trending. Political Lip. Go ahead and take us deeper into how we scale these moves and reclaim the game from the ground up.
You know, I stay deep in the blueprint, Cess. And I'll tell you this, the future isn't waiting. It's already showing up in fragments, just not always in the mainstream. LeBron James and Maverick Carter started the Spring Hill Company, and they turned it, it's more than just a production studio. It's a player-run media empire that controls the narrative. That's vertical integration. From the story to the screen to the sponsor. That's the level Black athletes need to aim for. Not just being in the commercial, but owning the rights to the commercial. Claude Anderson said it plain. Without control of the vertical supply chain, from labor to media to distribution, Black people will always be used to elevate white wealth. Always. That's not just about ownership. It's about integration. You can't just sell a jersey. You need to manufacture it, distribute it, and own the platform that promotes it. That's why these collectives and co-ops matter, because individual deals might build a name, but collective power builds a nation. And don't let anybody tell you it's unrealistic. We've already seen it happen when athletes pool their power. The WNBA got better pay, visibility, and protection because players organized. The NBA bubble in 2020 happened because players said no justice, no games. When athletes align their voices, the business world listens. Now imagine aligning that voice with ownership, funding, legal support, and content control. That's not just about empowerment, that's a paradigm shift. So here's the vision, plain and simple. A sports economy where Black athletes aren't just part of the product, they're part of the process, from contracts to copyrights, from game time to airtime, from NIL to IPO. That's not a dream, it's a destination. And they're the roadmap to get there. It starts with belief, built through cooperation, and gets funded through strategy. It's time to stop renting our image and start owning our industry. Full stop.
Let's clock the real tea. Because not everything that looks like liberation is. This NIL era, a lot of folks out here calling it empowerment. But me, I call it what it really is. The ecosystem. It's loud, it's shiny, it got cameras, captions, and contracts. But pull back the filter and ask yourself, is this real power or just a better spotlight on the same old stage? Because the question ain't just can you get the deal, it's do you have a plan? What good is visibility if you ain't got a vision? Let's talk structure. Yeah, some NIL platforms out here are building stars, but are they building systems? Or is it just solo branding with no backbone, no blueprint, and no backup? Because here's the trick. When capitalism starts handing out trophies too quick, that might mean you stop being a threat. That's the trap. Turning what could be radical into rehearsed. Turning Black excellence into performance art without the power shift behind it. We've seen this hustle before. Commercials during the anthem, slogans on warm-up tees, woke ad campaigns making billions for brands, while the very athletes fueling that momentum still got no seat at the ownership table. See, capitalism don't always kill revolution with a bullet. Sometimes it books you for a brand deal. It don't silence you, it puts you in a Super Bowl ad. It don't fight you, it funds you just enough to quiet the collective energy. That's how they take our resistance and flip it into revenue for them. And this right here, this is where it gets bigger than sports. The NIL moment is a test, fam. It's asking, can Black athletes move from flexing for the gram to building real generational power? Can we take this individual energy and flip it into a collective movement, one with economic teeth and political reach? Because if this generation can disrupt college sports with NIL, what's stopping them from shaking up labor, politics, education, tech, the whole damn system? This ain't just about jersey sales. It's about the future of Black labor, Black wealth, and Black power. Lil, talk to the people about what it really looks like when athletes stop performing for the system and start rebuilding it.
Well, let me say this straight. Yes, it can spark something greater, but only if we treat it like a movement and not a moment. And that means moving from ego to ecosystem. NIL has cracked the door. What's on the other side ain't guaranteed. Black athletes have potential to lead one of the most significant labor shifts in American history. But potential without organizing, that's just a headline. Now think about it. Athletes are already one of the most visible labor classes in America. They're skilled, they're strategic. They already perform under pressure. But more importantly, they move the culture. When they speak, the world listens. Now imagine that culture capital leverage, not just for endorsements, but for collective bargaining, HBCU investment, Black-owned banks, and even political campaigns. That's not just disruption. That's economic insurgency. But that only works if we resist the urge to go solo. Individual NIL dream deals feel like freedom, but collective NIL strategies, they create freedom. That's the difference. And right now, we're in a fight between individual elevation and group liberation. That's why so many of these young athletes are being courted, not just for their game, but for their silence. Because once we move as a unit, the system cracks. So yes, this is a test case for broader class and race organizing, but it only becomes revolutionary when the athletes themselves realize they're not just entertainers, they're workers, they're influencers, they're leaders. This ain't just about sport. It's about building an economy that reflects our values, not just our value. Are we ready for revolution? We better be, because it's already knocking.
Let's bring this thing home. We open this conversation with the wisdom of Dr. Claude Anderson, and we're closing it with that same truth, still echoing through every locker room, boardroom, and backroom deal. Can we finally shift from a world where black labor creates white wealth to a world where black labor builds black futures? Can we flip the script from exploitation to empowerment, not just in hashtags, but in real life? This ain't just a call out to the athletes. This is a call out to the whole culture. The fans who fuel the stands, the policymakers who shape the rules, the educators guiding the next generation, the investors who say they stand for equity. We all got a role to play, and it's time to move. From endorsement to ownership, from playing the game to writing the game plan, from ego-driven moments to ecosystem-minded movements. Let's be clear. This ain't about hating the system. It's about outgrowing it, about building one that reflects us, one that respects us, one that's run by us. A system where athletes don't just sign contracts, they draft them. Fans don't just buy jerseys, they invest in infrastructure. The black community doesn't just power the product, we own the pipeline. Because here's the truth. Black athletes have always had power. Now it's time to have freedom. Not just in name, not just in image, not just in likeness, but in ownership, strategy, vision, and legacy. This ain't the end of the conversation. It's the start of a new blueprint. Let's build it together.
That's right. That's right there, Cess. We've done more than enough running, jumping, scoring, and performing. Now it's time we start building, owning, and leading. Because if black athletes can turn NIL into a movement and not just a moment, we can change the trajectory of our communities for generations. But it's going to take all of us refusing to clap from the sideline. We got to ask harder questions, support black-owned platforms, and demand new systems. That's how we move from spectacle to structure, from hustle to heritage. That's how we go from laborers to legacy makers. So we want y'all to do what powerful communities do: organize and amplify. Like this episode, share it, comment, subscribe to the channel, and bring 10 people with you next time. Your crew, your teammates, your student, your uncle that always has something to say about LeBron. Bring him, because we need all hands on deck if we're going to shift this narrative.
Bam, that's a wrap on today's episode of Cess Talks Sports, BWISE PoliSports Tea Time, where we don't just spill the tea, we break down the playbook. If this combo hit home, if it challenged you, charged you up, or made you think twice, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, drop a comment, subscribe to the movement, because we're just getting started. Next episode, we're taking it straight to the front lines with the NIL Gold Rush, high school edition, what parents and students need to know. We're talking NIL agencies popping up overnight, the rise of teen athlete influencers, and whether these deals are truly wealth builders or just new age traps wrapped in designer promises. Do not miss it, because y'all already know sports ain't never just about the scoreboard. It's about the stories, the systems, and the strategy behind every play. This has been Cess Talks Sports at BWISE PoliSports Tea Time, with Political Lil bringing that policy punch. And Cess, your favorite auntie with Uncle tendencies, holding the line and calling the fouls. Together, we bring the tea, the truth, and the tactics. Until next time, stay tuned. Talk soon. We out.